You are now listening to In the Trench.
Welcome back to another episode of In the Trench. Today we have a very fun episode. Our good friend Ken Gerhard came on the podcast today. And for those of you who don't know Ken is a world-renowned author and cryptozoologist. He's been on shows all over History Channel that has to do with a topic as like Ancient Aliens and other shows like that similar. Ken actually sent us his book that I will be reading in its entirety because I am extremely interested in all these topics and I want to be able to be more informed for future episodes when I'm able to talk to other cryptozoologists, because rest assured they are also coming. Special episode coming at the end of this month. But thanks again for Ken coming on the show. We talked about so many topics from Bigfoot to Thunderbirds to aliens and to my own personal experience that I had when I was a kid, and he was able to weigh in on the topic a little bit more. Appreciate you, Ken, again for coming on. Thank you so much. And stay tuned for the next week's episode, which is also going to be a pretty good one. So see you guys then. Thank you so much for joining. When Nicole told me she got you on, I'm like, no way. I've seen this guy all over History Channel before.
Well, I'm honored to be on your show. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Do I sound okay?
Yeah, you sound fantastic. You sound great. And I am so interested to know what's behind you. I see so many like pictures and like drawings of what looks to be cryptids behind you.
Yeah, my whole apartment is covered with pictures of cryptids and articles and things. Actually, unfortunately, I don't have my computer set up, but a better view is up here where I have all my Bigfoot casts and different trinkets. But yeah, there's a few things behind me: sea monsters and Sasquatches and the Beast of Gévaudan.
Let's just get into it. I'm so excited. It's very rare to have someone that is in this field that I can like just ask all the questions I have about. Well, I guess the first one I want to ask, or just I guess the first question I have is, what is like your main cryptid that I guess you are either fascinated with, on the hunt for? What is the one that you would say the main?
Oh gosh, yeah. People ask me that a lot. It's really hard for me to choose. I enjoy being a generalist, so I cover a lot of different topics: Bigfoot, the Loch Ness monster, other lake monsters, four-legged beasties. But I guess the one that I'm associated with the most within the field of cryptozoology would be the thunderbirds, which are the giant winged creatures that people have reported seeing. They don't get as much publicity as some of the others, but I've been investigating those actively for 20 plus years, and I've interviewed so many witnesses that claim they've seen these giant, well, there's actually two types. Some people say they look like monstrous birds with like a 15 or 20 foot wingspan, dark feathers and a hooked beak, kind of like a raptor or an accipiterid type of bird. And then a lot of witnesses have also described things that they call prehistoric, and they'll describe leathery bat-like wings and certain features like a long tail. Yeah, kind of like a pterosaur. Pterosaur would be the larger family, and then pteranodon, and there's many different species within that. So yeah, it's fascinating. It seems improbable that these things could actually exist, especially if they're flying around. But
yeah, you think you'd see them, but
you think
it's such a massive world. Honestly, there's bound to be stuff that just we miss.
Well, that's kind of one of the tenets, the pillars of cryptozoology, is that the process of discovery is ongoing and the planet is vast. And
hey, you can't disprove anything. You can't disprove it. You can't disprove an unknown, right? And when it comes, okay, so terror birds, you've been studying these for 20 something years. What's some evidence that you've come across, or some clues that you've found?
Well, it's really all about the eyewitness testimony.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there's no physical trace evidence that's been found in terms of like giant feathers or eggshells or nests or anything like that. A giant pile of bird crap on someone's car. There is one kind of ambiguous, controversial video that was shot in 1977 that shows two big birds in Illinois, but it's very hard to tell exactly what they are.
Yeah,
they look large. But the eyewitness testimony is pretty consistent, and they seem to be in certain areas, which is kind of compelling that you have these clusters of sightings. And you also have many Native American legends of thunderbirds, thunder beings from many different tribes.
And the Quetzalcoatlus, right, is
Yeah,
another one that.
that would be the Aztec feathered serpent.
Yep.
Here in the U.S., we have the Cherokee I get proud of this one. Tlanawa.
Yeah.
That's a tough one to say. The Lakota people have something called the Wakanyan. There's the Pomala, the Denesi, Chegwe. So there's all these different Native American names for basically monstrous birds that are portrayed as being much larger than eagles or anything that condors or anything that should exist in North America.
Yeah. No, it's interesting with the terror birds. I've heard them before. I've seen many shows, whether it's Ancient Aliens, which I've seen you on before, whether it be some just other documentaries of just cryptid or cryptozoologists talking about it. So it's definitely an interesting topic. I've never been too fascinated by them. I'm more into I've been super fascinated by Bigfoot, aliens, and I have here on the list that I've seen one is the Jersey Devil scares the crap out of me. That's one that is just I saw one documentary on that one. I still have trouble sleeping when I think about it.
Yeah, that's a creepy one for sure. There's a curse and
so isn't it like
the physical descriptions?
There was a family, there was a husband and a wife, and the wife had 12 kids and decided to curse the 13th one.
That's the traditional story. Mother Leeds is her name.
Yeah.
Or some people say Mother Lords, but this happened back in 1735, I believe, that this Jersey Devil was spawned, the cursed 13th child of this poor Mother Leeds, and that it flew off into the night. Once it was born, it sprouted wings and other devilish features and flew off into the night in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey.
Yeah,
and,
that's the creepiest.
It's a good legend. The greatest flap or concentration of sightings occurred in January of 1909, and that's when you had, for at least a couple-week period, there were dozens of reports stemming from areas of southern New Jersey and across the Delaware River in Pennsylvania, and then periodically there will be a sighting here or there.
Now, obviously, New Jersey is very famous for being full of drug addicts and drunks and people partying. So, I'm assuming when it comes
Careful.
to
I'm not from New Jersey, but someone.
No. I have a lot of friends from New Jersey. So.
But all right, you can cast that aspersion. My sister lives in New Jersey, and her section is kind of nice. But
no, I'm saying no. New Jersey has beautiful areas, high class areas. I'm saying when I'm talking about the Jersey Strip is really the little concentrated area I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And when
there are rough parts of town, sure.
When it comes to being a cryptozoologist, you find it hard getting trustworthy testimonials?
Well, that's a good question. It's a kind of a subjective process in terms of identifying if an eyewitness is credible or not.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of different factors. I have my own kind of rating system for eyewitness credibility. The most convincing reports are those that involve multiple witnesses that you can interview separately that will corroborate each other and say, I saw it, she saw it, he saw it, we all saw it. That's pretty convincing when you have all those people. And then in terms of individual witnesses, you have people that are trained observers, particularly of wildlife. People that are in the outdoors a lot and work with a lot of different kinds of animals tend to be better observers of animals and even unknown animals. Whereas, Mr. City Mouse from Newark, or whatever might get freaked out if he sees some big bird out in the country. And then, unfortunately, there are people that either have kind of, it's unkind to say, but sort of delusional, that's a determination that can be made sometimes.
Yep.
Based on if the story is just so sensational. Like there's a guy that told me he saw a thunderbird with a 260-foot wingspan over Pennsylvania, and that's so big that that's like Godzilla size. I mean, but he seems sincere, but it just doesn't make sense. And then you also have hoaxers. That's unfortunately a big part of the field also is dealing with people that are just making up stories or trying to get publicity or whatever. So.
And people hype it up to try to bring business, right? When it comes to we saw there was an alien abductee here, so they make a whole cafe around being an alien cafe.
There's that. But I mean,
Yep.
check this out. I mean, so many people these days have, YouTube, TikTok
Yeah.
channels, Instagram accounts or whatever. And, what's going to get more clickbait than saying, oh, a New Jersey Devil. Is this a Jersey Devil that I just videotaped in my backyard or whatever? And you're going to probably get a million people that are just curious about that. So
I'm very
those things
curious to
happen.
hear your take on aliens because I've actually had an experience
Oh,
before
wow.
in my life. I was very young. I was like 10 years old, and it was me, my mom, and my dad, and we were on a highway at night. And I live in Florida, so there's where was it? It was on the Everglades was to our right. I don't know what road we were on, but the Everglades was to our right. And I remember this vividly because we all stopped the car because we couldn't believe it. There was like this red ball of fire. It's what it looked like. It was this red ball of fire. It came down from the sky. We don't know where it came from. And it just kind of hovered for a second. It looked like a red circle in the sky. Like we were looking at it, like we're trying to make do with what it was. But then what really confused us were the movements it was making, because it didn't just keep falling down. It kind of stopped, and it looked like if you had a laser pointer on a wall, like there was zero friction. It was just going left, right, up, down, sideways. And then it just shot away. And we were left. I don't know if that was possibly an experience. I don't know if that was a natural phenomena, but that was definitely something that I've stuck with my whole life.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing. That is amazing. Well, yeah, first of all, there seems to be a little bit of a confusion about, where the lines blur between some of these different fields of the unexplained. It's true. I have been on Ancient Aliens. I've spoken at some UFO conferences. I have many friends and colleagues that investigate UFOs. Cryptozoology is not really about aliens and UFOs. That's kind of like more ufology.
Homegrown. Yep.
Yeah. So, but I do, I've been interested in it since I was a kid, all of these different mysteries. I just haven't investigated aliens as much. But look, I'm open-minded. Certainly there seem to be objects and have been objects in the sky that are unidentified for, going back to the 19th century and maybe, in the Bible, if you want to go back, or some of the ancient aliens stories from past civilizations. I find it difficult, and I always approach these things as scientifically as possible. So like when I hear people that have written books saying that I've identified the 270 types of aliens, here they are listed out. I mean, that's the type of knowledge that we can't possibly possess.
Yeah.
There isn't enough data to make that type of determination.
Yep.
On the other hand, even Carl Sagan, who was a skeptic, and others through the years have said, well, the universe, the probability is with such a vast universe and so many star systems that there is life elsewhere in the universe. And with that larger probability, perhaps some alien forms did figure out ways to get from there to here. One of the really fun theories that I like is, the possibility that these UFOs are actually from the future. And
that they're us from the future. I love that theory.
They're coming back in time to just kind of like, maybe, who knows? I mean, it's all speculation.
Maybe it's a future tour. It's like something that they do for fun.
Tourism or something, but or maybe they're just studying the history, or who knows? But I mean, that you can't rule out
that's
that
my favorite theory
either. It's it is possible. We know that we exist, and as long as we can keep the planet alive, there's a good possibility that hundreds of years in the future we'll have technology maybe to travel through time. So who knows?
Awesome. Well, keeping it on cryptidozoology, how big are you on Bigfoot?
I'm big on Bigfoot.
Awesome, because I know we have the book. We have the book, right? We ordered the book for the Bigfoot one that you wrote.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, Bigfoot's the rock star, and I'm
Bigfoot's the rock star, and I'm the most on board about it. Everybody asks me, "Do you really believe in Bigfoot?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course I do." Like, Bigfoot was, or let's say he is alive right now. He is a real animal, right? Wouldn't it be Gigantopithecus? Wouldn't that be Bigfoot?
That is a theory that's been out there for many years, actually going back to the 50s, if you consider the Yeti. But I actually, in terms of the serious Bigfoot researchers now are less inclined to think that a surviving Gigantopithecus, and for those of your listeners that don't know, Gigantopithecus is a giant ape that lived in China, Asia, up until about 100,000 years ago during the Pleistocene, and it was all we have are its teeth and jawbones, so we don't know exactly how, but they were huge teeth and jawbones, so we know it was big. But did it walk upright? Did it look like a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch? That's the question. We don't know. But there's actually a better candidate now that I think a lot of Bigfoot researchers are embracing, and it's a species called Paranthropus boisei, which was a robust Australopithecine that lived in Africa maybe about 1 million years ago. And it looked just like Bigfoot, except it was much shorter. They were only about 5.5 feet tall, but they had the sagittal crest, the pointy head, the very powerful built, big jaws, and they definitely walked upright. And so, I think that at least we can make an argument that it looks enough like a Bigfoot that if something like that were still around and it had evolved and gotten bigger, taller since 1 million years ago and had come across to North America, then that would really be a perfect description of a Bigfoot.
And what kind of, I guess, evidence or sort of clues have you come across when it comes to Bigfoot? Have you had your own encounter?
Oh yeah. I've never seen one with my own eyes, but I've heard them vocalize on a few occasions. And one time in particular, August 18th, 2003, I heard and recorded one very close by. It was grunting. It sounded very much like an ape, very powerful, loud, deep. Didn't sound like anything in North America that should exist in North America. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a canid. It wasn't a, whatever, bird, deer and rut. Couldn't see it. It was in heavy brush, but it was close by. We did find some other evidence later on in that spot. So, and I've heard some other noises, kind of howls and whoops and things that are more like primate type sounds. So, and I found some, footprints, large human-like footprints and things. So,
would you think they're dangerous creatures, or do you think they're just trying to if you were to come across one, do you think it would be aggressive towards you?
Well, that's a good question. I think any animal can be dangerous and should be respected, particularly a large animal. But I think that the Bigfoot is mischaracterized as a hyper-aggressive monster that wants to rip
people
apart.
look at it as like a monster.
No, I view it as again, if you consider it something like Paranthropus or some other surviving hominin, it's probably about as intelligent as a chimpanzee or a little bit more. Chimpanzees are pretty scary, actually. That's a whole nother topic we can get on it. But gorillas not so much, but chimpanzees are. But I honestly think they're as afraid of us as we are of them, and that they've adapted survival avoidance behaviors, and that they're very good at staying away from humans. They live deep in the wilderness. They seem to be mostly nocturnal or crepuscular. They move around a lot, or they're nomadic, and they seem to be very aware of humans. So I think that there could be occasional situations where humans encounter them and there might be an aggressive, there are stories of them throwing stones at people and screaming and banging on walls and things like that. I do not advocate the belief that they're out there killing people, abducting people. I think they're just like any other large animal. They, even a bears typically are very cautious and reticent around humans. They're not necessarily hyper aggressive, except for maybe polar bears, but other bears are not so much. Mountain lions.
I'm glad you mentioned polar bears, because my next question to you was, when it comes to, Bigfoot and Yeti, the normal situations that they're cousins, right? Or like they're the same species, but maybe different. Like we have polar bears.
Subspecies.
We have polar bears, we have grizzly bears, one of the ice, one of the other. What's your take on Yetis?
Well, first of all, Yetis are not white. So that's a misconception a lot of people have because of the way the media, they're portrayed in Disney movies and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and, some of these.
Abominable snowman.
Yeah, we know that footprints have been found in snow. So, I mean, I guess that would be an assumption that they're white like polar bears. But if you actually listen to most of the accounts, and most of the sightings are from the Sherpa people that live in Nepal and in the Himalaya there. They describe them typically as being brownish or brownish red fur. So similar to a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, maybe not quite as tall. I think the average height there is like 6 to 7 feet versus 7.5 or 8 feet here. So it could be a subspecies of Bigfoot. Again, if we consider a hypothetical trajectory where the Australopithecines like Paranthropus migrated out of Africa through Asia and then to North America when the continents were connected, then the Himalaya would have been right on the way.
Yeah.
So I mean, so they could have,
Maybe
you know,
some stayed behind.
stopped there and set up an outpost, or, you know, a population started, and then they continued to migrate. So many species do that. So
Well, they must definitely have a very elevated IQ for a primate when it comes to that, because there has to be some reason we haven't found any like remains or dead bodies. And that's another like really big question that comes across. Like, do they
a great
bury their
question.
dead?
It's a great question. Where are the remains? And there's a whole chapter in my Bigfoot book dedicated to that question. Look, intelligence can be demonstrated in a number of different ways. On your wall there behind you, I see what looks to be the tentacles of an octopus.
Smartest ocean animal.
Octopi are cephalopods. They're mollusks.
Yep.
And but they have a brain. They have a complex brain that fires about 500 million neurons, and they can figure out problems, and they can camouflage. They can do all kinds of amazing things. But, you know, are they intelligent? Well, they have a special type of intelligence for what they're good at. So it's the same way, I think, with Bigfoot or Sasquatch. I think they're intelligent enough. Their intelligence lies in their ability to be elusive. So again, they recognize that Homo sapiens are their greatest enemy, that we would drive them to extinction or hunt them. And therefore, they're very good at avoiding us, staying hidden. And again, that means staying on the move, in the dark, in areas we don't go. And they may bury their own dead. I mean, that's all speculation, but if they may be smart enough to do that. But, you know, I encourage people to think critically and to ask skeptical questions. And the question you just asked is a perfectly acceptable skeptical question. Why haven't we found the remains?
Yeah, it's the big one that I come across. And when it comes to me, I wouldn't consider myself a skeptic. You know, I really do consider myself a believer, because to me, when it comes to that, what I always tell people, well, it's more fun to believe than to not believe, right?
That's true.
I'd rather just accept the fact that, hey, listen, you can't tell me they don't exist because you don't know if they do, right? So I'd rather believe that they do. That's something I tell people, and it's I feel like it's just a more fun way to go about life.
The world is definitely more fun. My world is more fun with Bigfoot in it. That's
exactly.
For sure.
And what I want to talk to you next is because, like you said, you know, I got a huge octopus. Our whole theme's like underwater, even though we've had marine biologists on before. We've talked to people like that before, but I'm terrified. I personally am terrified of the ocean. Like, I just do not know what is down there. Other than the Loch Ness Monster, I'm not really familiar with any other like ocean cryptids.
Well, we'll play off your poster there. What part of Florida are you in?
We're South Florida, close to Miami. Yeah.
Well, up near Jacksonville, there's a place called St. Augustine.
Yep.
And in 1892, the remains of what could be a giant octopus washed up on a beach there, and known as the St. Augustine monster. There were some tissue samples that were saved, and it was all documented by a local naturalist named Verrill. I can't remember, E.W. Verrill, I think. But anyways, yeah, it could have been an octopus that was 120 feet long.
Wow.
Most likely now that tissue has been DNA tested, and it probably was something else.
Squid?
No, whale. Whale blubber. That's what they say. You know, that's the current find. But anyways, for a while there, we thought, and there's still some that make that argument that no, it was a giant octopus. So, you know, there are a number of lake monsters around the world. The descriptions are very similar to a Nessie type thing. And by the way, the image of the small head and the long neck poking out of the water like this, that is kind of another misconception, because only about 15% of lake monster sightings describe a head and a neck. 85% just describe big humps that come out of the water. Yeah, well, who knows? If it's a hump, it's a hump, right?
Yeah.
So could be a mosasaur or something else.
I'm gonna show you this actually, because my favorite animals are sharks, right? And what better shark to be? Here we go. In fact, it's funny you said St. Augustine, because I picked this up in St. Augustine when I went there like 15 years ago. One of my most prized possessions is I have a
megalodon tooth.
A nice little megalodon tooth.
Yeah, that's nice. I got one about that size, and I also have one someone just gave me as a necklace. So
those are so cool.
A juvenile megalodon that I'll put over my. But yeah, people ask me about that. Could megalodons still be alive? Well, it's believed now that Megalodon was outcompeted by great whites and smaller sharks, and that basically just the ocean habitat changed about the time it supposedly died out, which was, I think, probably about 2 million years ago at the end of the Pliocene.
Yeah.
It is not impossible that a version of Megalodon could have evolved into the deeper ocean, but while they were around, they were probably pelagic, swimming through the mid layers of the ocean and eating whales and things. So
Yeah.
I think we would have, if Megalodon were out there, we would have certainly a better idea or better evidence than we do at this point. But
I hope he is.
It's fun to romanticize. But I got to tell you, Esteban, I'm totally with you. I'm not a big fan of going in the ocean, going in the water.
No,
why
sir.
introduce yourself into the food chain? That's
It's not my area. You know what I mean? If any medium-sized fish can kill me, right? I'm not made to be inside of the water. I'm made to be on land. Put a shark in front of me on land.
You're
a different
a terrestrial species. Yes,
exactly.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I'm cool with pools. I'll go in any pool. I love pools, but I can't go into the ocean. That's my biggest fear. Me and my friend Dakota share that deathly fear of that. And I guess the final question to not drag this out too long, because I know we said we're gonna keep it between 15 and 20, is what do you think the scariest encounter of any species or any cryptid or any story that you've heard or had yourself?
Oh gosh. The scariest. Boy, that's a good one. Are we, and obviously we're talking like more credible, right? Because
Something that either
there are a lot of stories out there that seem incredible.
I'm sure the people have been abducted by aliens and have been probed, but I'm talking about like something that either you have seen or like gone through, or know somebody close to you that you can verify as a credible source that has gone through something.
Well, in terms of Bigfoot, you have the Ape Canyon incident, which occurred in 1924, July of 1924. There were 5 miners up in near Mount St. Helens in Washington State that were encountering these Bigfoot creatures for a period of time, and then they shot one of them, and shot at one of them, and then, according to the story that night, according to their testimony, the night after they shot one, their cabin was attacked, and there were several Bigfoots that were like trying to break in, crash the walls, reaching through and throwing rocks. And this made the newspapers back, the Oregonian newspaper back in 1924. And so that's pretty scary. If you can imagine a whole bunch of Bigfoots converging on your little
I would just go outside and let them have me.
So
there's no use of, I'd be too scared. I'm like, just kill me, honestly. Like it's less scary if you just get it out of the way.
Oh, and there's also a boy, Marlon. We were talking about Thunderbirds earlier. The
Yeah.
Lawndale incident, July 25th, 1977. A 9-year-old boy named Marlon Lowe in Lawndale, Illinois, was picked up by a giant bird, one of 2 giant birds, and carried in its talons for about 35 feet, very low off, just barely off the ground. It couldn't pick him up, and he managed to break loose. And this was observed by his parents, 2 other adults that were there, and 2 other kids. And so that's pretty scary that, a little boy could be picked up by a big, presumably one of these Thunderbird.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
No, that's absolutely. Thank you for sharing those. Yeah, no, it's definitely. I've always had a fear of Bigfoot. Looking back at it, I have more respect for them than I do fear. But it's just, it's the unknown. Like if I go camping all the time, if I come across a Bigfoot, I'm gonna like get super. I'm gonna be like, wow, look, Bigfoot. I'm so interested. Let me take a picture. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna run for my life. You know what I mean?
I think most people would probably be scared in that situation. It is the unknown. I mean, we can speculate about what they'll do and their behavior, but it's an unknown, and they're big.
I've heard they like mimicking people. That's the scary part.
Yeah.
I heard a story of some lady in a cabin who apparently a Bigfoot came. She was alone. I think she was a park ranger. I don't know what park. I'm trying to find this story and cite it, but she was alone and she kept hearing like these weird like noises, and she went out to her window and there was a Bigfoot like face to face right in front of her window. And like she would turn her head and he would turn his head, and like it would just mimic her and everything she did. Ever since I heard that story, like I still get goosebumps.
Creepy.
Yeah,
very creepy.
It's very eerie. It's like, well, I mean, what's next for Ken? Like, what are you doing next? What show's coming up? What's your next endeavor? I'm excited.
Well, thanks again for having me on, Esteban. It was great to be here.
Of course.
Let's see. I can currently be seen on a series called The Proof Is Out There on the History Channel. The new season should be debuting, I guess, in October. I also have been filming some episodes of The Unexplained with William Shatner, also on History Channel.
Awesome.
I do a lot of lectures around the country. So I will be at the Mothman Festival in Point Pleasant, West Virginia next weekend. And then I'll be at the Minnesota Bigfoot Conference and the Texas Bigfoot Conference in October.
Any Florida conferences that we can maybe pop by?
They've started a Florida Bigfoot conference. I think it's in Lake City. They've done it 2 years and I haven't been invited yet, but I'm hoping maybe next year I'll get invited because I do have a lot of friends and supporters out in Florida. I would love to see.
Well, if you get invited, we'll be there.